Good morning and welcome back again to those who participated already yesterday, and nice to have you here in the panel to those who are new in the round. What is, generally speaking, a producer group by definition? What could it be? Why do we need them and why should they be empowered? Some of the issues of this panel. My name is Jochum from the Austrian Chamber of Agriculture. I'm additionally chairman of the Working Party on Food Quality at Copa-Cogeca. There I have to rectify a message from yesterday. This organization does not represent 22 million farms, as I said yesterday, but only 22 million farmers with their families, and this number was correct, another 22,000 cooperatives. Behind the stage, or should I say somewhere in the Zoom universe, I'm assisted by the pilot officer Branka Tome, deputy head of the quality unit at DG Agri. Welcome, Branka. What I have to repeat from yesterday as my personal and professional conviction, and as a kind of a foreword. In oversupplied food markets, product differentiation through quality is key because it provides better prices for smaller structures with limited quantities. Income is price by quantity minus costs. As a producer, you do not have only the triggers quantity and costs, you have also the factor price. Therefore, quality policy is structural policy, and GIs are the centerpiece of quality policy. My job for today is to enable a lively debate with the aim to create and collect ideas and positions as input for the upcoming political debate about the revision of the quality policy. So don't be shy and also dare to be provocative. We have again Lionel Lalac from Cognac and Riccardo Deserti from the Consorzio del Formaggio Parmigiano Reggiano, the two keynote speakers from yesterday among us. Riccardo, hopefully you got access and you are here. Can you tell us your impression from yesterday in 1 minute? Riccardo, are you here? Okay, obviously he is still looking for the right meeting room. Okay, now, Lionel. Yeah, Lionel, you are here. Maybe, Lionel, you can do it. What was your impression from yesterday? What in 1 minute? Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christian. Well, I think it was really interesting to see that from both presentations of Riccardo and I, we had the question, we had some key points in common. About the question of value and value sharing, which seems to be really a very important point. As you mentioned yesterday, this is a question also of economy, because without a strong economy, without a strong organization, indeed you have some weaknesses. So this is really this question of value sharing and economy on a wider stage. In the same time, and you also mentioned in your introduction, what are we speaking about exactly? Is it only about GI producers? Is it about GI groups? What are we talking about? Yesterday, there was questions about ownership of a GI. Usually we speak more about holders than owners because it's different. In French, we speak about titulaire de l'IG. So that is kind of question which are also really interesting. But I think that the question of value is the very core of the point, because if you want something to be sustainable, everybody that is working in this branch must have sufficient income. If it's not the case, you have a problem. You have a problem, and you are in a situation where you will not be in a position to keep this organization. So I really think the question of how you can adapt the organization from a finance perspective, from a process perspective, from a decision-making perspective, in order to be able to give all the tools necessary so that everybody can share the value within the whole branch. So that will be my short summary of yesterday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Ricardo. I see that you are here. May I invite you to listen during this panel discussion and tell us what you will take with you after the panel discussion. What I would like to do beforehand is, so to say, a short introduction concerning GI groups. The legal basis for GI groups is Article 3 of the Quality Regulation 1151 concerning the legal form of a group, and primarily Article 45, which describes the roles of a group. Based on this, we know GI groups in several functions. In the registration process, as well as for amendments of product specifications and cancellation requests, GI groups play a role. Then they have to survey the protection of the registered names. That's one of the points in Article 45. Then they have to control the product specification, so the internal control, and they have the option to inform and promote their products, or that they can do market surveys. The allowance of the management of supply is not laid down in the quality regulation. It's part of the single CMO of the Common Market Organization, actually only for ham and cheese. And as you may know, actually it's discussed under the CAP package also for other commodities or for all commodities. And actually this is laid down in Article 150 and Article 172 of the single CMO. To start with, I have been given some questions, and then, so to say, it's up to you. How could the agricultural rules be adapted to enable member states to strengthen the position of producers engaged in GI production in the food supply chain? So this has to do with all these issues of strengthening the role of the primary sector alongside the chain. Should the existing powers currently attributed to GI groups be expanded or reduced? Another question, to what extent should GI groups be able to impose terms and conditions, example, compulsory bottling or packaging, limitation on volumes on producers? Another question, how can GI groups be made responsible to take own initiative actions on behalf of all producers, for example, to monitor the food supply chain, defend the collective GI rights from misuses and counterfeiting, and to promote GIs and seek registration protection in non-EU countries? And the last question, how can rural development interventions play a more important role to support actions by GI groups? Today, the focus is on the stakeholder debate. So, ladies and gentlemen, to start with, that I would suggest that if you want to pose a questions, either you can do it by chat, you have it on the bottom of your screen, or please raise your hand. So I will see who is raising your hand, and I will give you the floor. Maybe we can start with a contribution from Elena Di Bella. She has written in the chat. Elena, can you unmute the micro and the camera?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm speaking on behalf of Euromontana. That is a big organization dealing with more than 40 different organizations, farmers in mountain areas all over the Europe. And I'm speaking from the side of small producers, especially in mountain areas. I think we have really a different situation because on one side, small producers in mountain areas don't use GA systems because they have several different private trademarks, or they are included in a lot of different voluntary private quality schemes, or from 2011 and 2012 year, we have the mountain optional quality term, the optional term mountain products. Then I can say that mountain producers and small producers consider GA system as one of the several options for create a value of their production. And then I think this is an aspect to be considered. And then I think for them, on their point of view, we need, as far as GI are concerned, first, access to application, because the problem for small farmers is to have enough financial and operational resources to applicate if they want to create a new GA label. Then on this side, they and very often public local authorities finance the project of application to create a new label, because small producers don't have enough resources. Then I think that on this side, on European side, we have to think to or a financial support, or at least a guidance and assistance during the application process. And also after the approval of the GA, of the geographical indication label, that the small farmers or producers groups need, when they are small, an assistance about enforcement. And yesterday I listened some intervention proposing a sort of enforcement ex officio that can be in favor of small GA labels. Also very useful, could be very useful, the creation of a network or networks for knowledge and best practice exchange. That is very important for small labels in mountain areas, to exchange best practices and
Elena,
yes.
Just to focus on the role of the producer groups.
Yeah.
What you mentioned, I think we have understood the problems of small groups with limited resources, etc.
Yeah.
To what extent do you think that a good structure, a good cooperation among, even if they are small farmers or processors, is essential, is key to apply for a GI or to do promotion?
Yes, I think that in several cases we have a GA example in small, in mountain areas. Small GI are existing in several areas in Europe. Then this is possible. And that I think in this case, and I get to your final question about rural interventions, interventions from rural development plans or funds. I think that it can play a very important role. And then financing and sustaining public or private campaign, especially in large retail trade or in general in retail at local level. That can be then some activities for promoting and for raising the awareness to consumers in retail, in the headquarters, in shops. It can be something very useful for small farmers to increase the awareness of GA products.
So the rural development program is essential, especially to assist smaller groups.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, of course, we in the framework of our mountain optional term that is not really a geographical indication label, we still need a support to encourage member states to, in this case, to raise awareness of producers and consumers about the existence of this option that is very interesting. It is not really enough known on the side of producers and on the side of consumers.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your valuable contribution. I have another request for a contribution by Michael McManus. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it correctly. Michael, the floor is yours. Maybe you can introduce yourself and your background. Michael?
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Michael McManus. I'm a beef farmer from middle of Ireland, Central Ireland, and I represent Irish Beef Producers, which is the first licensed producer organisation in Ireland. And from an Irish perspective, producer organisations haven't developed or haven't evolved to the same extent as they have across our European neighbours. But for development and empowering producer organisations, we see that there is financial assistance giving for the setup of producer organisations just to facilitate the paperwork involved and the issuing of the licence. And after that, we feel that there should be a programme provided through rural development to assist producer organisations to get organised and get clerical and secretarial support to communicate with members and to get an office and a structure in place to empower the producers to come together from a central location to deal on pricing and promotional aspects as well.
Okay, so your message is that in your case, you would like to have stronger producer groups.
Yes, we feel that looking at it all as a whole, that each producer group across the EU availing of GIs and in the GI system should be licensed as a producer organisation to allow them negotiate price and to not fall foul of any anti-competition law, because to negotiate price you must have the license.
So this is a clear message, because one question was, should the role and the position of producer groups should be enhanced or reduced, and this is a clear plaidoyer to enhance the role and, so to say, the power of producer groups. But what your message is also, you need assistance by public support that these structures can establish, evolve, grow, etc.
There is also, we feel, an opportunity being missed in without the financial assistance, that the consumer or consumers across the EU are very concerned about food security and where their food comes, and particularly the GIs that are available. And I feel if each producer organization was funded and allowed to have a social media presence which would promote the GIs, promote the regions, and bring it back into real time, farmers on their land producing and how they evolve, and this could be shown and explained through various social media platforms, which would integrate our consumer population in large cities and towns back with the rural economy, and this would break that disconnect. We really need to reconnect with our consumers. It is incumbent on us to promote our products and to educate our consumers and show them how our cheese, our butter, our beef, our products, our vegetables are produced, and the work that goes into doing it. There is a lot of misconception amongst citizens and consumers as to how things are produced, and this is a link that we are missing as farmers and as producers. We should fill that void, because currently it is being filled with misinformation and speculation that we need to re-educate. Our consumers have gone 2-3 steps away from our rural economies, and they don't understand the process.
This is also a good argument that the groups behind the GI should play a role in this respect to, so to say, reconnect producers and consumers.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. There was another request for an intervention by Daniela Zandona. Please unmute the macro and activate the camera and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. I'm trying to activate the camera, but it says...
Oh, please start.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, hi.
Hello, thank you everyone. Thank you, Jochum, for giving me the floor. So I would like to build a little bit upon yesterday's presentation and give some insights into the GI wine sector. I am EFO, the European Federation of Origin Wines advisor on EU affairs. So yesterday's interventions showed that there are some guiding principles for GIs to be successful, and I would like to stress sustainable. And it seems that the success is very much embedded in the capacity of these GI groups to govern, meaning to be representative, to manage collectively their economic future, for instance, on volumes, to distribute added value, as many insisted, and to protect the name and the use of it. And in terms of empowerment of GI groups in the wine sector, we are currently looking at 2 issues, so competition rules and representativeness. So we are governed by the CMO, we're not governed by Regulation 1151. And in the wine sector, and in many member states in the wine sector, interbranch organizations play a crucial role. And we would like to see these structures to benefit from what we say is a strengthened and clarified EU regulatory framework. So as far as competition law is concerned, we believe there are some shortcomings in our regulation nowadays, and maybe this could be adapted to other sectors too. And we believe that the ongoing CAP reform has taken on board some interesting issues. For example, the possibility for our interbranches organization to talk about price and volume indicators. And this is crucial for us because if not, we can be sanctioned by competition authorities for cartels on price. And this has been the case in the wine sector, for instance, in PDO Alsace or in PDO Côte-du-Rhône. And then there's another issue which was also discussed more largely yesterday by Cognac, is about the possibility to actually establish standard value sharing clauses for GI products. And now the Andrier report in the framework of the CAP reform also gives us this possibility. And we believe that these two elements of consultation allow a real collective management of GIs. If not, the whole process is undermined. Because if you cannot exchange about additional costs on the market linked to the specifications when you make changes, for instance, you want to add agro-environmental new measures to become more sustainable, this is the whole objective of the farm to fork, then you cannot discuss about these additional costs and you basically don't go anywhere with the issue. And there can be no quality policy if there are not these discussions and if producers cannot be assured that their costs will be covered and will be covered basically.
So this is an argument that as it is in the wine sector, that the vertical structure alongside the chain where wine growers, winemakers, etc. are part of the organization can talk about, so to say, sharing value or bearing costs, and not only, so to say, shifting it to the weakest part of the chain.
Exactly. And that is very important. For example, in this crisis, in the COVID crisis, there's an ability to discuss how the harvest would be financed, how the market would go. In some appellations, we've seen that wine growers simply did not take care of their wines, of their grapes, because they weren't assured that their costs will be covered. And big PDOs have a big volume which has gone down. And also, there's been no investment in quality, and wines without quality don't go anywhere. So it is a real issue in times of wealth and in times of crisis. And then there's another issue we've been discussing about is what representativeness should actually look like. For instance, how do we make sure that producers, so wine growers, are effectively actually represented? How do we make sure that this process is not hijacked from some traders or some bottlers, for instance? And how
the clear message yesterday, both in the case of cheese and wine, or cognac, that you have to have this equilibrium, a balance.
Exactly. So, but then, for example, when we take decisions, we need in inter-branch organizations to reach 2/3. And this is not always easy. So how do we make this rule evolve while ensuring that the process is not jeopardized?
Yeah.
And finally, this is a big question some are wondering is, then do we make membership mandatory to ensure that there are no free riders, that people just don't hijack the process just for their own individual interest, because GI is about everyone, about collectivity.
Of course.
So I just wanted to share some of these thoughts with the audience, and
okay,
that's it.
Thank you. I think that the wine sector, with its history and tradition, is a good example for structures which are vertically organized, so that everybody or every part of the chain is involved in the decision-making process, etc. And also with this sensitive issue, how to impose rules to growers or producers outside the group. So, which is a sensitive issue where I have a question back to you.
Mm-hmm.
How, in the case where everything is based on clear rules and such a decision is made that whatever it may be in the wine sector, I don't know, sugar grade or whatever, has to be obeyed. How is this executed? Because if a GI group decides on this, is it up to the group to execute it, or are they assisted by the public authorities? How does this work in practice?
Well, this very much depends on let's say, national history and national law. For instance, in France, to ensure that everyone contributes to the body, there's something that is called, which is an oxymoron, contribution volontaire obligatoire. And this way, everyone is forced to finance the group, because indirectly they always benefit from it. But this is not the case everywhere, to be fair. Now they're not, as far as I know, there are not really any rules. We can make compulsory, for instance, only what is in the specification currently, but everything else, the extension of rules, is not necessarily mandatory. And so some people, that is why they hijack the process. So every time they want to include new norms in the specification, especially in the economic field, and we don't get to the 2/3, nothing happens.
Okay.
The whole process just is void. So the objective is, as yesterday was shown, good GIs have a structure which works soundly. And if there are impediments, then there is no investments, no growth, no quality, and producers simply disappear. But the big problem with GIs is, especially in the wine sector, if the producers don't produce, there's nothing else to produce in many areas. So it's rural exodus. So it's a combination of finding a balance between big, small actors and different interests.
But I think that's the challenge for every group where you do something together, to have rules where everybody can is integrated and can contribute. And can accept it. And if it's not possible to have clear rules that, let's say, you have the 2/3 majority, that then it's obligatory for everybody. Okay, thank you for your intervention. Looking at the chat, there was this question whether GI groups could also play a role concerning plant varieties or animal breeds. And there was a written answer that seeds and planting materials or breeds cannot be registered as GIs. Nevertheless, we have, like in the case in the panel before, where I participated, many GIs based on special breeds, like in the case of this German GI of Schwäbisch Hellisch Pok. I think they cannot get involved into the protection of the breed or the variety. That's a completely different, also political and legal matter. But I have a case in Austria where the situation of the breeds changed, and the GI got a problem because there was nobody to care for this very old breed. The GI itself had to organize this, that they get piglets, etc. Then there was a question from you can also read the chat. Okay, the next is Patricia Hegedusich. Patricia, please. I think you're from the Croatian Ministry.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Christian. My name is Patricia Hegedusich, and I'm working in the Ministry of Agriculture in Croatia. The Ministry of Agriculture is the competent authority responsible for GIs policy making and for part of official controls related to GIs. Last days I was discussing with my colleagues about the position and the role of the producer groups, and we all agreed that strengthening the role of the producer groups is certainly a challenge both for the competent authorities and for the producers themselves in finding the answers on how the groups can be empowered or additionally involved in the protection of registered names. The Regulation 1151 on quality schemes already explains the role of producer groups, but in practice, the groups themselves are not always aware that their role is crucial to ensure the credibility of the system. The fight against unfair competition and the misuse of protected names should be at the top of the list for the producers. In practice, in Croatia, it has been shown that GI producers themselves recognize the unfair competition and abuse of protected names, sometimes even among the members of the group. But they do not report such irregularities to the authorities because they do not want to expose themselves. For this reason, it should be mandatory for the groups to report any irregularities or misuse of GIs to the competent authorities without exposing any entity directly. Another important thing is the education of producers, not only consumers. Groups should be responsible for educating their members in order to be informed about their rights and opportunities, but also educated in terms of the obligations arising from participation in the quality system, as well as possible changes in legislation related to their businesses. In any case, the establishment of common frameworks for producer groups should take into account the differences between member states and thus producer groups. Even within just one member state, producer groups are very different, with different number of members, ranging from groups with only a few members to groups with about 100 members or more. They also produce a variety of products, from simple primary products to expensive processed products. These are all elements that also affect the financial capabilities of the groups. That is why we think about the role of the group. Not only activities that require financial support should be considered, but also the activities such as obligation to report the misuse of protected names or ensuring that each member of the group is adequately informed of all aspects related to his or her participation in the quality system.
Okay, so that's, so to say, your approach from the administrative side to,
yes.
GI groups.
Yes.
Stay in. There is another similar message from Carola Schober from the Bavarian Ministry of Food, also reflecting on the role of producer groups, that they should be strengthened. Maybe Carola, could you intervene personally in Vision? And Patricia, if you could please mute the micro.
Okay.
Carola Schober?
Yes, I have some technical problems, but I hope you can hear me well.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm from the Bavarian Ministry of Agriculture, and our experience is that the structure and the awareness of the GI system regarding the producer groups is very different from country to country and even from region to region. So the Bavarian Ministry, as you might know, is really working on this topic for about 30 years, and we try to enhance our to encourage our producer groups, and the national co-financing in the promotion policy was a pretty important tool to do this. So this would be a suggestion to reintroduce this again. Thank you.
Do you mean the promotion policy or rural development policy?
The promotion policy, but of course it would be great if there would be a specific program in the rural development policy as well.
So because in the rural development policy you have actually, and also foreseen the next period, a lot of possibilities for all kinds of cooperation. So if you want to introduce a cooperation, a group for whatever purposes, or you have an existing group which wants to develop further, there you have a broad range of supply, depending on how the member state or the region does the programming, because the rural development, the second pillar of the CAP, is co-financed by the member states. So it's up to them how they compose, what tools out of this huge toolbox they will use. And it depends on the member state or on the region, what are their emphasis. In the promotion sector, actually, as far as I know, so to say, representative producer groups are allowed to apply for the EU promotion. But they have also a second option, especially for GI groups. They can apply also under the Rural Development Scheme for measure 3.2.1 for promotion or for information, and 3.11 for the participation in the quality scheme. So I think depending on the member state, there are several options how to help producer groups. But what I have seen in the interventions before, we have options for public assistance, and nevertheless, in looking at practice, we have a broad range of well and not so well functioning GI groups. And concerning the Bavarian situation, you, as far as I know, have also, as part of your policy, to especially help the small GIs. Concerning this structural aspect, do you have special funds for this, or advice, or assistance, coaching, training programs?
Yes, the Bavarian Marketing Agency tries to give as much information about the EU program as possible to the producer groups. This for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
okay.
This is yes.
Okay. And does it work? And is it just, so to say, just money, or is it more than money?
It's Beratung, what's in English?
Advisory service, advice.
Yeah, advisory service.
Okay.
And I think it works, but it would be better to give give more to the producer groups, to encourage them to see the GI system and to work really with it.
Okay, I understand. So that's an issue which is well known, that what Elena Di Bella mentioned. They have several options. So if they have a trademark or a logo from a regional quality program, they are happy with it and refrain from applying for a GI, because this is, so to say, more burdensome. Okay, thank you, Carola. There is in the chat a Francis who is answering several requests. Who is this Francis? Maybe he can show his face and activate his camera. Francis, are you here? Are you listening? Okay. So we have further comments in the chat room. Okay, again, Michael McManus, the second pillar of the CAP, so that's the rural development. Should second pillar of CAP be encouraged to provide this financial assistance and development of producer organizations as an EU-wide intervention to streamline across all countries? Just to clarify, the rural development, the second pillar, you have general rules for all member states, but The programming is done by the regions or member states, which at the end leads to very diverse programs where not always this financial assistance for cooperation and producer groups is foreseen. So it depends on the member state, and I think knowing the criteria behind the common agricultural policy, that this will not be possible to shift it, so to say, from the second pillar to the first pillar. Okay, there is an Albanian intervention, maybe. The name is Albana. Who reacted to the intervention of Patricia from Croatia, the brandy problem. Okay, that's a bilateral question. So just to do a preliminary conclusion concerning the GI groups, my impression is that the groups, the structure behind the GI is key, is crucial, that they have to be assisted by public money, which means public support, which means in practice rural development, but also just exclusively national money is, I think, is also possible. That these groups should play a more active role, so to say, to reconnect producers and consumers, which means that they identify with their product and with their group. To do this, they shall get a more, so to say, a higher legal status, which depends on the so-called representativeness, which in the wine sector is, I think, a good example, because they are executing it and implementing it since many decades, where for me also a special aspect is this interbranch structure, which means this horizontal cooperation alongside the chain between the primary producers who provide the raw material, but also the manufacturers and the trade. The aspect of internal controls, irregularities, I think a good functioning GI group is actively controlling or executing an internal maybe self-assessment scheme, and it's in their own interest to notify irregularities to the authorities, or to if it's possible to prevent them. As I have promised you at the beginning, we have now Riccardo Deserti among us. He followed the discussion. Riccardo, as we are approaching the end, could you summarize from your perspective and with your experience what you will take away from this panel?
Yes, thank you, Christian. I think that listening all the debate, I listen an overall agreement on the target. Now, the problem is how to continue in a roadmap of this work we need. In my opinion, the starting point should be the Article 45, where the regulation state 6 bullets. If we look to the bullets, the first 5 bullets now define clearly the roles. The problem is how to support the groups, small ones, bigger ones, different problem, with money and fund to execute these services. Speaking concretely, the bullet 2 is on the legal protection. The third is on promotion, and some of colleagues spoke about these needs. About the legal protection, now we haven't at European level any kind of tool to support the financial cost of legal action that a lot of us make around the world. And if we win as Parmigiano, as Cognac, or as all of GIs, we win a legal action, we support the interest of all the system. And in my opinion, this could be a new frontier. On the other end, for information and promotion, we can speak about the co-financing and how to support especially the new group, because if we look to all the new registration, is very different the situation of historical product. If you consider that Parmigiano Reggiano Consortio was born in 1934, a lot of time before the regulation. But we have also new ones and new GIs, and they need to establish the group starting from zero. It's very different situation, and we have to modulate the tools. Concluding, in my opinion, where we need a legal work is the 6th bullet of the Article 45, where it says to take the objective is to enhance the value of products and speak about the detrimental to the act against the action that mislead and slow down the value of GIs. Here we can find a new role and activities, like as the definition of specification for use of ingredients that yesterday we spoke in the previous panel, but also for the monitoring of transparency along the supply chain. For this point, we need at European level, and also with an approach of habilitation, as Michael Manus spoke, we need to define a specific way to put in charge of these new powers the groups.
Okay, thank you, Riccardo, for this conclusion. The last point, I'm well aware, is always the discussion to what extent it's up to the authorities and to what extent up to the producer group in their own interest to be active concerning this protection of the GIs. But I think many contributions went in the same direction. For me, there is still the question if we have many instruments in place, depending on the member state, but in general, there are several instruments in place to help groups. Why, in some cases, they are doing well, they are active, they are also contributing financially to their structure, and why in other cases it's a little bit a weak story where they are not really using the instruments and the powers they would have legally. And I think we will keep the discussion and it will be ongoing. And the general message that the producer groups play a key role is clear. And with this, I would like to thank you for participating. I would like to thank those who contributed in the discussion and also to the assistants behind the stage who prepared the conference and made it technically doable. Stay connected and now head again for the plenary meeting for the last round. Thank you and goodbye.